Back in November, I had the rare opportunity to sit down with a very distinguished gentleman, Captain Ralph Goldie Goldsticker, a World War II and Korean War veteran and one of the last surviving members of the 728th Bombardment Squadron. Goldie and his son shared his story of World War II service and Korean War service with us. He brought out many great artifacts that were very personal mementos to him, and I was shocked to learn that he had the French Legion of Honor at the Knight level, or Chevalier level, meaning he is technically a knight in France. Goldie's story was absolutely amazing and worth hearing. He had such great storytelling. He remembered everything with vivid detail. Times, places, people, everything was just perfect. So sit back and relax and enjoy the next half an hour as we listen to the story of Ralph Goldie Goldsticker, a true American hero in World War II and Korean War veteran. A rare opportunity to sit down with a World War II veteran. Sir, if you could please state your name and rank for the record, just so we have it on file.
Ralph Goldsticker. My rank was first lieutenant when I was discharged after World War II, promoted to captain during Korea when I was in the reserves.
So you served in both wars?
Not really. I was in the reserves. We didn't move out of St. Louis. I just attended meetings. That was it.
Admin
During
stuff.
Korea.
Oh, okay. So where are you originally from?
St. Louis, Missouri. Grew up in University City.
That was a big city, small city?
It's a western suburb of St. Louis. And then I moved in, after I got married, moved to Clayton, another suburb, for 55 years. Now I live in Creve Coeur, Missouri, with another suburb.
So
for the last 20 years.
Good old Missouri boy through and through.
Yeah, never left.
Some people wouldn't blame you, would they? So can you tell me a little bit about your family growing up? Brothers, sisters?
I had one sister who was 22 months older than I. She was born December 3rd, 1919. And I was born on October 26, 1921. And we grew up in a nice neighborhood until the Depression hit. And my father was in the millinery business. That's manufacturing ladies' hats. And during the Depression, he had to close his business, and we moved in the city. And I graduated from U City High School at 16, and then I went to Washington University for one semester, and my family couldn't afford the $125 for the next semester, so I went to Harris Teachers College, which is free for the city citizens. So after 2 years of that, it was much of a student. I quit and went to work at Rice Sticks, a dry goods company downtown St. Louis for 50 cents an hour, 44 hours a week, 4 hours on Saturday.
Jeez. Now, obviously, you're a World War II and Korean War vet. Was there a history of service in your family, or were you kind of the first?
There's history, but it's not consecutive. My great-grandfather fought in the Mexican War. My grandfather fought in the Civil War. And I had an uncle fighting in World War I, another uncle graduated West Point in 1930, so he was in the Army, but no real history, as I would say, like some families have. All the kids were in the service. It didn't happen.
Now,
my father was too old to serve in World War I, so
okay.
He did not serve.
Now, what brought you into the service? I mean, obviously you knew there was a war going on.
Right. Well, after Pearl Harbor, I knew I was going to be drafted. Well, I joined the 1st Missouri Infantry. I don't remember what it is. I Googled it, and the last mention was during the Civil War. So I don't think it was the same thing. But anyway, I got the recruiting circular from the Air Force saying you can be an officer in 6 months if you can qualify to be a pilot, bombardier, navigator. And since my uncle was an officer, I wanted to be an officer too. So I applied in March of 1942 and took the test in May and passed them and enlisted July 6, 1942 in the Army Aviation Cadet Corps.
So you opted to join rather than wait to be drafted and
Yes.
put wherever.
Yes.
Now, was there a reason you picked the Army over, say, the Navy or the Marines?
The recruiting poster. I've seen too many John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart movies where the pilots were the hero. Never been in an airplane, but I thought that'd be nice. But not looking down the road what could happen, but at the time it seemed right.
Now,
I'll take my hat off and get it.
okay. Now, where was your basic training?
Depends which. After I enlisted, I went to Jefferson Barracks for about 2 months waiting for Nashville Classification Center open. And it opened, and we were sent there and tested to see whether we qualified to be a pilot, bombardier, navigator. I passed all three and said I wanted to be a pilot. So I was sent to Maxwell Field for pre-flight for 6 weeks. It was an old established Army base, so we had suites of 6 rather than barracks of 60. And got to know my roommate very well. We were together 6 or 8 months. Unfortunately, 4 out of the 6 of us were killed in the war.
Oh, sorry to hear
And
that.
from there, after pre-flight, I went to Albany, Georgia for flight training in PTs, 17 Stearmans. And after about 10 hours duo, I had my first solo flight on New Year's Eve, 1942. It's the first time I've been in an airplane.
That had to be kind of neat, New Year's Eve, first solo flight.
Yeah, and also perfect landing, except thought the wind was coming from the left, so I hit the left rudder. Ground looped the plane and broke off a wing or cracked a wing. I can see my instructor at the end of the runway throwing down his parachute. How could a student do that? But anyway,
Well,
it's another.
Well, you landed, right?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I
so-
did 3 more times cracked wings. But after my 40-hour flight check, when the instructor cut the engine, you're supposed to go upwind, of course. I went downwind, so anyway, I got washed out of pilot school. So then I said I wanted to be a bombardier. I'd seen a movie with Randall Scott. He was the hero. So
Do you remember the name of the movie?
the Bombardier.
Oh, neat. Now, when you went to training, was that your first time away from home, or had you traveled before?
I had traveled, I had hitchhiked around the country 3 different times.
Really?
Yeah, once to, I guess I was 16 and went down to Dallas to see some cousins, hitchhiked down, another time to Washington, D.C., another time back to Denver where my grandmother was. But as a family, we traveled.
Okay, so what about after basic? You washed out of pilot school, said, you know what, I'll be a bombardier.
So I went back to Ellington Field for pre-flight again, another 6 weeks. The same thing I had at Maxwell Field. Then from there, since it's going to be a bombardier, they're going to have 250 caliber guns in the nose. I had to go to aerial gunnery school at Laredo, Texas for 6 weeks. Then I went to Childress, Texas for 12 weeks of bombardier school, and they also added then 6 weeks of navigation training. So I was commissioned December 4th, 1943 as a second lieutenant in the Army Air Corps.
That's
The day
pretty
before graduation, 2 of our planes collided, and 3 of my classmates were killed. Good friends, we'd been together. Well, as you know, the Army, everything's alphabetical.
Yeah.
These are Dempsey, Hiding in French, and I was Goldstickers next in the list, so we'd been together about 8 months, and it was a blow.
Now, after training was done, did you continue on, or did you get a leave tour to go back home and see
I
your
went home
folks?
for about 2 weeks, and then I reported at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida, where they put together the air crews for B-17s.
So that's where you met your crew that you flew with.
Yes.
You remember those gentlemen?
By name, yes. And the co-pilot and I kept in touch for years afterwards, but there was, you knew, and after the war, except for the officers, I've never talked to one. One of them I did. I passed like through Macon, Georgia, where he lived, and I called him about 40 years later.
Now, you talked about how you became a bombardier. Could you tell us a little bit about what that actually entails?
Well, the Norden bomb sight was our secret weapon during World War II. We thought it was secret anyway. But anyway, it solved the problems of how the bomb's going to fall at tangential rate from the plane when you're going 200 miles an hour and the bomb leaves the plane. Of course, gravity takes over in the wind, whatever. And all I had to do was put in our speed and the wind and the altitude and jiggle some knobs, and that should put you on the target. It wasn't that easy, but that's basically what you're doing.
But like you said, you were the hero.
Well, for 10 minutes I was in control of the plane from the initial point to the target. At the initial point, the pilot put on autopilot, and to the bomb sight I would control the plane a little bit. Even though we dropped on the lead Bombadier, we flew 18 planes group, a lead group, a low group, and a high group. And we drop on the lead Bombadier, but we had to stay on our bomb site just in case he got shot down, we'd take over.
Now, what was the best part about being a Bombardier?
It wasn't the view on a combat mission, I'll tell you that. We'd go flying black cloud in front of you with all the flak. But other than that, it's nice view.
Now, you kind of got to select Bombardier, correct? Because
What?
you got to select being a Bombardier
Yes.
after. So you're an officer, you're a Bombardier. Did you maintain the pilot quality, or?
I never had a pilot. I had 10-hour solo, that's it.
But if the push came to shove, you probably could have flown the plane and landed.
Oh, I can't land a PT-17. I can't land a V-17.
It's not that much
We'd all
bigger.
be allowed first, believe me.
So it sounds like you got to MacDill and met your crew. When did you guys know, okay, we're going to Europe, not to the Pacific?
Well, I don't know. I mean, after 4 months of flying around, we're perfecting our piloting skills, navigation skills, bombing skills. They sent us to Savannah, Georgia, and said, take this plane to England. So we flew from Savannah to Fort Dix, New Jersey, into New Hampshire, Peacefield, then into Goose Bay, Labrador, and then Iceland, and then Ireland, and then into England, and then
So you didn't cross on the boat.
no.
Now, what was that trip like? I mean, obviously, it's not like today where you can get in a plane in Seattle and land in England.
Well, they said we had all these stops along the way, and we were worried about the trip from Labrador to Iceland, because our navigator went from Tampa to from Tampa to New Orleans and back, night flight. We're over the Atlantic, and he tells the pilot to keep going 90 degrees. So I was over the nose. I knew we were over Florida, so I corrected him. So we were a little worried because we'd heard planes just disappear in that 8-hour flight from.
You flew your own plane to England?
Yeah.
Oh, neat.
We flew a plane to England.
Oh, it wasn't the aircraft you flew during the war? Okay, I thought you were
It
transporting
was taken from a modification center once we got to England. Then we were assigned to the 452nd Bomb Group, 720 Squadron, because they lost 14 out of 24 planes on 12th of May over Brooks, Czechoslovakia. So we went as replacements in the group, in the squadron.
Now, how did you feel getting the news that you're going to England to fight against Germany?
That's what I expected. It wasn't good, bad, or indifferent. The war's on, we were trained to fly and do our job, so that was it. I didn't even thought about it.
Now, after you got to England, what kind of contact could you have back to the States? I mean, there's obviously letters you could write, but
Yeah.
could you make phone calls or telegraphs or anything?
No, I had all letters, and my mother did save all my letters.
Now, you mentioned you were married by this point, too.
No,
Oh, no.
no, I was single. I was 22 when we got over to England. Our pilot was just 22, the co-pilot was only 20, and the navigator's 25. He's the only one married on the crew, the teacher. And the gunners were all 19.
So you guys were all looking for young English women then?
Not necessarily.
So, when did you get your assignment to the 728th? Was it prior to leaving for England or after you arrived?
After we hit that modification center in England,
Okay.
we were playing, and we got on the trains, and that's where we ended up.
Now, how did you feel about getting to the 728th?
They'd know it from anything.
And it sounds like your whole crew went with you. You didn't have to pick up somebody new over there in England.
All 10 of us were in.
Also, you had a full accoutrement of 10.
Yeah. We had a pilot, a co-pilot, navigator, bombardier, an engineer on top of the top turret. We had a radio man. We had a ball turret with 2 guns. We had a waist gunner, one on each side with a gun, and a tail gunner with 250 calibers. And I had 250 calibers in those, so we had 10 50 caliber guns to protect us.
Who was the best shot on the plane?
Probably the tail gunner had the best shot. He isn't. For mine was the worst because it only had literally 2 seconds to fire. They're coming in at 400 miles an hour. You're going at 200, and the range of the bullets is maybe 1,000 yards or something. So I never hit anything.
Now, obviously, you flew a B-17, but what model was it? Was it a
G?
A G?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
That's the one with the chin turret and the 250 calibers under the nose.
Did you guys have nose art?
Sure, Deuces Wild, a pair of deuces.
Is that like on your jacket there?
Yeah.
Now, could you
I've never been able to find it.
could you open that? See your jacket a little bit. The Deuces Wild. Can I see your Deuces Wild? So that was your nose art. Was and your plane was called the Deuces Wild.
Right.
Now, how did that name come about?
The tail number is 297222.
And your tail gunner was Wild.
No, that was the number on the tail of the airplane.
Okay.
And we inherited it as a Deuces Wild. We didn't name it.
Oh, okay. 'Cause I was curious if you guys had named it.
No.
So, what was base life kind of like in England? I mean, just you're not going on a mission. What was your day-to-day life like?
We're training all the time, regardless. And as an officer, we were officer of the day, or you payroll. We had to do whatever. Always busy doing something. In the evening, different story. We go to the officers' club and play cards or shoot craps or whatever they had. And get to leave maybe once every 3 weeks, something like that. We go to London. After the buzz bombs, the V1 and V2 started coming into London, the rockets, and then we started going to Oxford, Cambridge, because we were getting shot at enough, we didn't need any more.
And so you just kind of toured the country when you weren't doing missions.
Not tour, but going to big cities.
Okay.
First time I went to London was a co-pilot and I. It was a couple days after D-Day, and we stayed at Savoy, a famous hotel in London. And all I remember, a warm bath, and the barracks was either hot or cold. There was no in between, but there we had. But just one, they had big bath sheets. I still buy them today. It's wonderful. And they're for £2 each. It cost us at the Savoy. After that, I stayed at the Red Cross Club for 50 cents a night.
So what would be a day like that you did go on a mission?
If I what?
If you were going on a mission, what would that day kind of be like for you?
Well, we come in the Quonset hut about 2:30 or 3 in the morning, and so you go, Antol's crew, you're flying. The night before, in the officers' club, they put a red ball on the bar. They knew a mission, but you didn't know who was flying. So they'd come in and wake you up and say you're flying. So we get dressed, go have breakfast, and then we go to the briefing room and find out what our target was. Then go back to the barracks and put on our flying clothes and go take a Jeep or truck out to the plane and wait to see if there's a green flare, you're flying. If a red flare, it's boarded because of weather probably. So we're always praying for a red flare, but generally green.
Now, how many missions do you think you flew, or do you know exactly?
I flew 35.
Wow. Now, are there any missions that stand out in your mind as like, I will always remember that mission?
Yeah, 3 or 4 of them.
Hey, you want to talk about those?
Well, the worst one was we were on the 31st of July. We were 27,000 feet over Munich, and a burst of flak hit us about 10 seconds after we released the bombs and knocked out 2 engines. And a piece of flak came through the bottom of the plane. The pilot sit on an armor seat, maybe a 1/4 inch thick, went through that, went through the co-pilots fly way up high. You couldn't put a tourniquet on it, going out the roof. So I gave him a shot of morphine and sprinkled sulfa on his wound. And at 40 degrees below zero, when we were at 27,000 feet, the blood froze as it came out. But as we descended on the two engines, we couldn't keep up. He started bleeding again. But I had to go back. My guns were being attacked by 109 Messerschmitts, but P-51s came and drove them all. So I gave him another shot of morphine, and we tried to go into Switzerland, but it was fogged in, so the last 3.5 hours I stood, held a bandage on his wound to keep him from bleeding to death. But he survived.
Now, what was that co-pilot's name?
Marty Atkin.
I'm guessing, did you stay in touch with him after the war at all?
He's the only one I did, yeah. Two reasons, I think. After even the mission, they give us a shot of scotch, and I didn't like scotch. I'd give it to him. So, and we're both Jewish, and normally, before the war, I'd go to the temple maybe twice a year. But over there, we went every Friday night and doing everything we could to save us.
Now, that brings up an interesting question. Did you fill out a Jewish American registration card when you entered service?
I had a J on my dog tags, and one is commissioned, one is enlisted man. When it was commissioned, I became Hebrew, an H. I tried to find out why it was changed. I have never been able to find out. I asked my rabbi one time, the chaplain in Atlantic City, where lots of Jews live. He was at a hospital visiting. He couldn't find any Jews. The Jews were listed under H as Hebrew. The J was for Jehovah's Witnesses. He went to all these rooms, and none of them were Jewish. I don't know why they changed.
I asked that question because the American Jewish Historical Society is trying to update their records in all Jewish service members from the United States.
I don't know.
I'll have to get in touch with them.
Okay.
So with that, I actually have another question.
In addition to that, Marty and I always talked about whether we're going to throw our dog tags away or not. We never came to a conclusion. It didn't happen, so if we were shot down, we were going to get rid of them.
Well, based on your heritage, how did you feel about fighting against the Nazis, who were effectively trying to eradicate your people?
It wasn't the Jewish part. It was just being there were Nazis that were taking the country, taking our freedom away. So we were fighting for the good of our country.
Was there ever a mission besides the one you described that you felt you may not come back from that?
35 of them.
So all 35, you had that feeling?
Yeah. You know, shooting at you, and it's the way it felt. So be it. And then I said I had no real expectation after the war. I wasn't going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or anything like that. My only ambition was to buy an automobile.
What was your dream automobile at the time?
Probably a Chevrolet. In 1948, I did buy a car. After the war, I took a job where the car was offered with the job. But I was all set to buy a Frazier. You still couldn't get cars in 48. And one of my friends said he could get me a Nash, so I bought a Nash.
You still have it?
Drove for 10 years. I mean, Nashes. I used to trade them every 2 years.
Oh, okay.
But I was a salesman selling children's clothing after the war. Most people look under the hood. I looked in the trunk, see how big the trunk was. And they had the biggest trunk of any of them, so I stayed with them as long as they made the Nash ambassador.
Nice. Now, you mentioned that you kept in touch with the co-pilot. Was there anybody else you kept in touch with consistently after the war?
No.
But you do remember who you served with?
Oh, I'll tell you their names, sure.
Oh, if you would tell me their names.
Hmm?
Could you tell me their names, please?
Joe Antoll, Marty Atkin, Harry Ladani, Ralph Goldsticker. There's Clayton and Fulmer, Boney, Fogarty. I'm missing one. Oh, Watkins.
Did any of them have any funny nicknames that you guys always used, or?
No, we called them by their last names, I guess.
Okay, I'm just curious, because sometimes, guys get a weird
Watkins
nickname.
was JR with his initials. I don't even know his first name.
So you already answered my next question was what'd you do after the war? But the big question that I'm sure Kyle Harris here does have too is, did you ever know any of the Lucky Lady crew?
No.
Did you ever see it?
I probably met them in the Officers Club after my 35th mission. I was afraid to come home because they were retraining us for bombing and with B-29s over Japan. And there was opening for a group awards officer. So I took that. And I stayed in England from October until March of 45 before I came home. So I'm sure I probably bumped into him in the Officers Club, but I didn't know him. I flew with 7 different crews after they broke up our crew.
Okay.
After our 20th mission. And I don't remember any of those guys.
So the gentleman you mentioned, you flew 20 consecutive missions with them.
What about them?
You flew 20 missions with them, and then they broke you up, you said.
Well, we flew 25 when Marty was hit. Then we flew 3 more together as a crew with a co-pilot. And then they broke up our crew after our 28th mission.
Okay. Now, did you ever happen to chance see the Red Tails as your escort by any chance?
See what?
The Red Tails.
No. They were flying out of Italy, and we were flying out of England.
Well, where did you fly out of England?
The Deafin Green and East Anglia part of England.
Have you been back since?
I've been to England, but I've never been back to the base.
Would you go back, do you think?
No, there's nothing there. Maybe parts of a runway. It was the middle of the field to begin with when they built the field, middle of a farm. So there's nothing.
So after the war, you came home. You got your job selling kids' clothes.
Yep.
Now, how did you meet your spouse?
Well, my wife had moved from Stockton, California, St. Louis, her senior year of college, out of high school. And then she went away to the University of Wisconsin for 4 years. So her junior year, spring, she brought her roommate home, and her aunt said, I'd get acquainted with some St. Louis boys. So her aunt lived in St. Louis and picked out 8 or 10 of us and threw a party, and we went. So as being a good gentleman, another fellow I got to take who became my wife, and our roommate reciprocate, took me out on a date. We flipped to see who was going to take who.
You got the good side of the coin then, huh?
I never told her for 16 years who won.
Well, I really appreciate it. Kyle, is there any questions you want to ask?
Yeah, we've talked about Flack, a couple of times, and you told me, would you just describe to me just what that was like, just how terrifying that was?
Well, Flack is an 88 millimeter shell, about 5 inches around, and I guess 2 or 3 feet long. It's preset to explode at altitude, your altitude. They can figure it by radio where you're going to be. And it bursts and they fly. Any aircraft, they had guns and shoot 4 at a time and just surround where you're going to be. And you're flying right into it. And these shells explode into thousands of pieces. And some of them hit your engine, some go through the fuselage, whatever it is. And there's nothing you can do. From the initial point to the target, about 10 minutes straight and level. You can't, no evasion of action, you can't avoid it. So you're flying right into it.
Did you feel scared at the time, or were you too?
Sure.
Okay.
Always. And here you are, a big plexiglass bubble all up in front of you. Nothing to protect you except some quarter-inch piece of plexiglass. Except we did have on flak suits, with metal flak suits if you got hit, but no, always scary.
You talk about your crew, and how close were you guys together during missions? I mean, can you describe what it was like, what they meant to you?
Our crew wasn't as close as some others I know, because others during a reunion they'd have 6 or 8 of the crew come. We had none, so I don't know. We did our jobs, and of course the enlisted men were there, and officers were here, so we knew them, but we didn't know them. We didn't socialize or anything. I mean, their barracks, we had ours, so.
What is it, how does it feel, or what does it mean to you coming back to the 728 80 years later?
Amazing that it still exists, because it was dissolved right after the war, I think in 47, and that's great that it's been in existence, and I appreciate you and Colonel Arson asked me to come here. I appreciate it. Had a great day today, and hopefully tonight and tomorrow as well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. How does it feel to you when you see other pilots now wearing the same patch that you wore in World War II?
I just wonder what kind of planes they started in. I wonder if any of them ever flew in a PT-17.
Did your crew have any traditions or anything like that after you guys landed from a mission and made it home?
No, you go back to your barracks and be happy you're alive until you saw 4 empty bunks there and 4 of your friends that you've been with in the morning making jokes, whatever were. You wonder if they're alive or POWs or worse.
How did you process that, or how did you cope with that when you came back and saw that?
I guess we all got Flack happy eventually. The first night in England, I was in the barracks, and the crew had flown 22 missions, and there were 3 live rounds at 45, and they were shooting at each other. Not trying to hit, but say, hey, I'm close to you, whatever it is. And I turned over and thought it was going to end fine. Stayed in England the first night. And later on, after we came back to rest home after a 25th mission, we were in the barracks, the gun patches to clean our guns. We loaded it with lighter fluid and put a match on and flipped with the other crew. And our pilot went back and split his hand. We didn't fly for 2 weeks, but we were flak camping. That's what we called in those days. Now it's PTSD, but we're shell shock in the first war.
You're a very humble man, but for someone like me to look back at D-Day, for instance, I have the utmost reverence for anybody who participated in that. And I know you say you're just doing your job, but do you understand like the scope of what, looking back on it, do you understand the scope of what you did for our country and the world?
Me, it was 16 million of us were in the World War II, and regardless of the job, whether you're a pilot or the Bombadier or baker, truck driver, armor, they're all important to do the job. For us to take off, we had probably 20 people on the ground. There were the crew chief and all his assistants, the armors that put the guns in and the bombs aboard, the truck driver brings the gasoline in, everybody, even the MPs, which were unhated when you needed. But no, we all did our job, no one special.
Do you, how does it make you feel when people talk to you about how important D-Day was, knowing that you participated in it?
Well, makes me feel like I've done something good, but as they say, I'm just doing my job.
Now, I do have one more question here. Actually, I'm backed up on this one. Now, you had a lot of experience and you've had a long time to look back in your service. Is there any piece of advice you could give to servicemen today and that would be carried forward in the 728th about being in service? Is there any piece of advice you want to give?
No, I think it's a good job for kids coming out of high school or college, ROTC, whatever it is. It's good training, and you learn discipline, and you learn to follow orders, and you learn how to give orders also, if you're an officer. No, I think it's a wonderful discipline.
Is there any final thoughts you want to share?
No.
You ready to get to the party?
Yeah, I'm getting hungry.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
You're going to hear the same thing in a few minutes.
So, but yeah,
Why don't you play that so I don't have to talk?